And so just for context, like what level of production do you have you guys been able to produce this year? And like, what are the plans for next year?
Okay, so this year we are on track to close 25 sales, not counting the personal transactions we did. Um, and it's about 10.6 million
In volume?
closed so far. So it'll be like around 11 and a half.
Got it. That's amazing. And then what's the goal for 2025?
45 transactions
Yeah.
is the goal.
So that's a big leap, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So, all right. So where I want to start this conversation is, first off, you guys working husband and wife, you're managing a family, and you're managing your real life, and now you're managing a business together. That's not easy, you know. And I've worked with a lot of husband and wife teams. It's not easy. What has been like? How did you guys? How are you managing that? How are you managing to stay productive while making sure each other know each other's boundaries, et cetera, et cetera? Like, how do you guys do it?
Oh, God.
I would say Taylor and I have always done a really good job of running a team and not just being individuals existing together.
Yeah.
We had our first kid, almost 8 years ago now, and it's always been, sort of a collaborative effort. She does things, I do things, kind of put it
Yeah.
together. So it's been the same in real estate. It was a really easy transition for Taylor to come in full time into the business and us just take roles and do stuff that
Yeah.
works.
I'll say the hardest part is the family life work balance, trying to make sure you're not forgetting the 3 kids and all the tasks and duties that are associated with that, plus trying to do the real estate stuff and making sure that you don't lose your mind in the process.
And remain married.
And then
so.
as part of like doing the business together, I would say it's really interesting to be able to look at him and be like, okay, you're not good at this aspect, and that's okay because I'm really good at that part. So let me take over that, and you're better at this, so you do this, and just I feel like that's why we work so well together, and we're best friends too. So it kind of just works.
It's great. How, just quickly, how would you guys, how have you structured the business? Like who's doing what right now? And I know you guys just made a recent hire if you guys want to speak to that too.
So in the beginning, we were both doing lead gen together, and I was doing the administrative side of it. I was making sure that I was doing the follow up and all that, and then he was doing the transaction, working with the transaction coordinator, kind of coordinating on the phone calls and the agents calling and whatnot. And then we recently, I think it was like 3 months ago, I stopped prospecting completely and started trying to learn all the parts that I didn't previously know how to do with talking to everyone, getting everything coordinated together. So that trying to take all the administrative stuff off of his plate. So that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, my role is really scattered as like,
Doing a little bit of everything.
yeah, wasn't
Yeah.
working.
But now you guys have just made a recent business decision based on some conversations we've had lately. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we just recently decided to go ahead and hire an administrative assistant to take over all of that so that I can get back into doing lead gen. And I'm excited.
So that's where the big jump's going to come, right? So then both of you can focus on what we would call revenue generating things for the business. And then you've decided to delegate or hire or invest in administrative work to get that off your plate. Because in just some recent coaching conversations we've had, Taylor, we talked about what is your time actually worth? Do we think that your time spent acquiring new clients and new business and driving revenue would be worth more money than paying an assistant, call it about $40,000 a year? And we said, absolutely. Absolutely. We think that you can generate more than $40,000 a year for the company. And so therefore you made a business decision to say, okay, we're going to leverage out, we're going to invest in another person to handle the non-income producing activities, delegate all of that. And now you got 2 people driving revenue, driving income, which is going to take you from 25 to 45 in next year. And so what would that do in GCI, in terms of GCI? So you guys did call it 11, 12 million this year in volume. So next year, if that doubles to 20, 25 million in your market, what type of GCI would that represent?
Oh gosh, I don't know, 500 probably.
Yeah. And so in your market, I mean, that I would imagine gives you guys a nice lifestyle. Would that be fair?
Yeah. And we've made a lot of trimming going on. We talk about like eliminating the 80% of the things we don't want. And really honing in on where we're going to focus our efforts of lead generation because I mean, we burnt ourselves out on $150,000 listings and
That take twice the amount of work
Yeah.
just figure out where
in
you
our
want to
market,
be.
anyways.
Our average price from like 2020 was 179 to where we're at now is like a little over 400. I think it's 416. I looked.
It's a huge jump.
It's a really, I mean, it was over 5 years, right? But it's 4 years. It's been a big help.
Yeah. So let's talk about lead generation. This is the thing I think that most agents really, really struggle with. And so you guys have been doing this now for, call it 10, 11 years. What have you found that was just a complete waste of your time, energy, maybe money that you've tried over the past decade? I want to speak to those because a lot of agents spend a lot of the time chasing these shiny objects that don't amount to anything. And maybe you can save them from that. And then let's talk about what you are doing that you're succeeding with. Would that be fair?
Yeah. So when we were at our last brokerage, which we just left, which gives us a leverage to hire this person to keep moving forward, we did a lot of buyer lead generation. And
I was running like paid Facebook ads, trying to get buyers for listings, and we would call them and nobody would answer. And we would just keep calling like these same people in our system.
yeah, like, do you want to buy in 6 months? Do you want to buy a
And
house?
I'm not saying it never worked because yes, it did occasionally work and there were ROI was still there, but the amount of time and it felt like no matter how hard we tried, it could not be in our control. And since the results were so little, it was hard to want to continue to be consistent with it and work really hard at it because it really, I mean, most of the time it did not work.
Yeah. So we went from not doing any sort of lead generation. Just, we've lived here a long time. We have a lot of people that we know, and I sold a lot of houses over the years to just friends and family and acquaintances and stuff like that. And it really carried us through. And then, in 2020, we started doing this outbound like buyer generation. We did double our business, but it was from 2.5 million to 5.
Got
and
it.
It was inconsistent as possibly could be. I mean, it was a train wreck.
How much were you guys spending in Facebook advertising? Like, what did that look like?
I hate to be honest about this, but I was not very good at tracking numbers when we were spending money on Facebook ads. I know it was definitely a few grand a year.
$800, some or less.
But I really don't even know.
Yeah. All right. So you were spending, $800, $1,000 a month on ads. And so to do buyer Facebook advertising, right? And then what else have you guys tried over the years?
We did like just SOI kind of, nothing like, what do I say? Nothing like systematized, just randomly reaching out to people.
We didn't track numbers. I didn't know how many houses I sold a year. I didn't know my average price point. I knew nothing about what was going on in my business for the first.
I mean, we would post on social media. I did a lot of that, but nothing consistent.
Yeah.
And it was mainly just like the very basic, like for sale or like check out this house. Like there was nothing personal or unique.
Yeah. I would post a link from the MLS to a house and say, this is a great deal. Anybody want to buy a house? And it worked kind of.
But we were always waiting for business to kind of fall in our laps. And then finally in November of last year, I was like, I'm done. Like this sucks. I'm so tired of it being up and down and like you can't control it at all. And I found out about expired listings, which we honestly, like we knew they existed, but we didn't know that people went after expireds. And then I found your video and then everything just transformed from there. I mean, last year we closed 4.4.
4.8 last year.
Yeah. And this year, I mean, it's at over 10 or whatever.
Yeah, that's a huge jump, right? So, I mean, that's what I think people want to hear about. And so, yeah, let's get into, so November last year, our paths cross, right? And then you guys start to say, wow, like many other agents, waiting for business is not a great business strategy. It's unfortunate how most of business is being done in this industry. You guys said, okay, no, we got to take a proactive approach to our lead generation. So what is it that you guys are doing right now? Let's talk about lead sources, and then we'll talk about methods of lead generation. So what are the sources of business that you're going after today?
Well, of course, our database is going to be a good source of business. Our past clients and friends and agent. I get agent referrals from some people and things like that. And then, prospecting, obviously. Like
what lead sources?
What lead sources? Expireds. I wrote down like my percentages. So for my close this year, 41% came from expireds. 4.5 came from circle prospecting, and the rest was all database business.
Database, past clients, center of influence, referrals, et cetera. Okay, great. So, how much time, and then so from a methodology standpoint, are you when you say prospecting, does that mean you're picking up the phone and calling people? Are you knocking on doors? Do you send text, email? Do you send pigeons? Over there. How does it work?
I'm on the phone dialing. I get on at 7:30, sort through the leads for the day. I pick out the ones I'm going to call, and I'm on the phone at least until 11, and then I'm usually doing follow-ups from there. And then if I don't have appointments, I'm just back on the phone and I call the expireds. I try and call them a few times a day. And in between that, I'm calling circle prospects and follow-ups and things like that.
So that's a huge jump, right? And what I mean by a huge jump is you went from doing no proactive lead generation to like really treating this like a sales business. Now you guys know your numbers, you're prospecting every single day. Many agents think to themselves, I know, Ian, I know, Taylor, that's what I need to be doing, but I just can't get myself to come to that. Like, how have you guys made this connection inside of your mind that like, this is what you need, not only what you need to do, because most people know what they need to do, but they still can't do it. How have you guys crossed over the line to be able to do such a very difficult thing on a consistent basis, which has proven to be pretty profitable? I mean, you're going to make a lot of money as a result, but how did you guys get yourselves to do this type of work?
For me, what is
numbers.
that?
It's
numbers.
just numbers.
For me, realizing numbers. Like, I guess I always felt like, oh, real estate's so, and family and friends will tell you, well, real estate's always up and down. It's not. My dad would always tell me, you should always keep your job as a nurse because it's consistent and you can count on that. And don't do real estate. You need to keep your license as a nurse and keep doing that and get another job. And I was like, no. And then I found out the numbers, and like, it's all a numbers game, just like any other business, and you can control it. And for me, that was like enough and a good shove for me to also push him.
So you guys started, and I know you want to jump in. So you're saying that you guys found great value in tracking your numbers, which again, most agents don't do because they don't understand the value in it. But for you, it was the thing that allowed you to see the concrete proof that like what we're doing actually, if you look back, it makes it very predictable. We know now exactly how to keep reproducing these results, right? By tracking the numbers. That's essentially what you're saying, correct?
Yeah, our broker really pushed on lead measures versus lag measures, right?
That's right.
Just do the lead measures and you'll get the outcome, right? So when we started prospecting, we were just on Vulcan and we were doing their coaching calls that they do. And that was another big stepping stone to get, because we didn't join your program until April. We were going from November until April doing it their way, which is radically different. And not to say there's anything particularly wrong with what they teach over there, but your method of disqualifying and not wasting your time on bad appointments and setting appointments that don't make sense, like that's been the biggest help, because going on appointments that are not ever going to turn into anything also costs money. Like, it's not, there's a lot of stuff involved with the day-to-day in the business, and trimming out the things that are not functional has been like a huge leap. I mean, it's been just another big leap when we started doing it the way you teach. And the prospecting games, when we started, one of the people in my group was like, I thought you just had your own way of doing these things, and I just hear you reading the script exactly the way it's supposed to, that's exactly the way it's written. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I gave Brandon money to teach me how to do it in a way that works. So why would I change it? It's like,
it's so funny. Agents that think that they see other agents succeeding before they succeed, and they actually think that you're doing something that I'm not teaching, which is why it's just, no, you just haven't, it hasn't been enough time yet. Because there's really only like, you've got time, and then you've got action, and then you've got skills. And so if you do those three things over enough time, you can't help but succeed. So we're going to talk about the skill sets in just a second, but how much prospecting can you guys, Ian, Taylor, speak to? Like, how much prospecting are you guys doing every day? You said 7 to 11 roughly, or 7:30 to 11, but how many conversations does that typically yield you on a morning?
It varies. I do my best to get 25 every day, but on the days where I don't have to go to appointments, I like to get back on the phone and keep going. So it doesn't happen as often as I'd like, because there's still a lot of things that we're learning here. But I'm trying.
What would you say is the average? What would you say if you looked over a week? Are you averaging 20, 25 a day?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. So
Prior to 3 months ago, I mean, I was doing 30 and he was doing 30 was our goal to get 30 each a day. I was doing my 3 hours. He was doing his 3 hours.
yeah, it's amazing. Okay, good. Now let's talk about the actual skills itself. So Ian, you just talked about a different way. You're learning how to sell. I mean, that's the work we're doing together. You're learning how to communicate.
Right.
And so can you speak to maybe, I don't know, one or two of the skills or techniques that you've learned that helps you guys in having these prospecting conversations? Because I think you're right. A lot of agents will get themselves to make the call, but then they're using an approach or maybe a script that isn't maybe as effective or as efficient, and then they feel like they're just spinning their wheels like a hamster. Can you speak to maybe one or two things you've learned recently that's helping you get more leads and more appointments?
Yeah. So, well, maybe not more leads and more appointments. Honestly, it's less leads and less appointments. It's
There you
less
go.
time wasted. So, like Brandon, are you going to put your house on the market tomorrow?
Right. No.
Am I going to waste my time trying to get in front of you, even though I haven't even, I don't know if you're actually going to do anything. So
Right.
we call these people and we're making appointments and they're like, oh, I'm not selling until next year, or I just decided to stay. And it's like, well, I made this appointment for no reason. And I'm here doing this rigmarole of a presentation here
So
to
like
try and,
disqualified.
yeah. So it's so really disqualifying. Like the less people I can meet with, the more qualified people I can try and meet with and not spend so much time driving around town, meeting with people who actually are never going to sell.
Love it. Makes so much sense.
Our appointments set to appointments met ratio is like in the 90s.
Wow. That's huge. And so we're going to talk about that in here in just a minute. So really you went from what I think a lot of agents do, which is to force the leading indicators, right? They force leads, they force appointments so that their tracker can look good. But then all the back half of the metrics, like their appointment set to appointment met, is like really low. And then they're met to taken really low, and it's like, well, that's all because you're living in this false sense of security on the prospecting side of things to maybe make yourself feel better. But what you guys have learned is if you can disqualify hard, closing becomes easy. The more due diligence, the harder you disqualify up front in these conversations, the back half of the sales business becomes very, very simple. Is that what you found?
Yeah. So our like contact to lead ratio is pretty low. It's like 5%. But it's like, because I'm making sure that person absolutely has to be a lead. And Taylor keeps me super accountable. She'll be like, that's not a lead. Throw it out. Like you're high on hopium here. Like, but turn the happy ears off. Because I'll get caught up in it and get excited and think, well,
Right.
maybe if I just yada yada, and I'll call people back like a couple of times and see if I can actually get all the way down to the bottom of it. But for the most part, like I'm not interested in setting people up on a 12-month mailing campaign that costs me money and
That's right.
all the time when I'm just going to end up in voicemail jail. So
yeah, it's a great point. So because you guys are tracking, can you walk us through your lead conversion numbers to give the audience like some context of what that looks like today? So let's start from the top. You said like what are your contacts per hour?
Contacts per hour, I don't know. It depends on the lead pillar that I'm calling, but
Sure.
On average, it's like maybe 8.
Okay.
8.
Makes total sense. I mean, you guys are doing 3 hours and you're doing 25 to 30 contacts, so you're 8 to 10 per hour. And then you said contact to lead is 5%, right?
Right.
And then lead to appointment set. Do you know that?
No,
we haven't.
Let me ask you a different question. Are most of your appointments coming from the very first conversation, or are they coming as a result of lead follow-up?
I'd say probably
Follow up.
70-30 follow-up to first call.
All right, so we're going to talk about lead follow-up in a second. So that's good to hear because most of the time when I talk to an agent and I see some people here in the live audience that work mostly expireds, where it's the opposite, that most of their appointments from expireds, cancels, withdrawn business comes from the first contact. But what they're missing is how to build a pipeline and how much business they're missing. We'll talk about that in a second. So your appointment set to met, though, you said was, what did you say that was? Like 90%?
It's like somewhere in the 90s, yeah. Like high
And then
80s.
okay, and we'll come back to that. And then your appointment met to listing taken, what is that closing ratio?
I think it's around 50%.
I
It was
really
like
don't know.
45 to 50. And of course, like it's always wonky because sometimes we'll meet with people like circle prospect people or sphere people who are like, yeah, we're going to list in, 3 months. We want to have the conversation, have you over see the place. And, I like, there's a lot of those that we know will become a listing. It's just, we're getting in front of them ahead of the game just
Yeah.
to, meet, see the place, make sure we know the numbers, because our market's kind of a little interesting in that, properties in the same neighborhood can go for way different values based on,
Sure.
certain.
But over time, like in 2025, I think what you guys are going to find in tracking your numbers for years and years and years is that, like, some of those appointments you met with this year that turn into a conversion next year, your ratios over time will increase because, right? So that'll all work itself out. So let's talk about the importance of lead follow-up and what you're doing when you generate a lead. And we talked about the importance of disqualifying to make sure you're not forcing those leads. What do you do? Like someone says, yeah, Ian, Taylor, we're not ready to meet right now, but why don't you give me a call back and we can look at doing something in the future? What typically happens in your business?
Gosh, it depends. So when somebody says, I'll give you a call back, I usually just ask them, like, you sound like you're really nice. Are you just telling me this to get me off the phone and you never ever want to talk to me again? Or do you really want me to call you? And, sometimes they laugh and sometimes they're like,
I think he's saying, how do you keep in touch with them? Am I correct?
how do I,
like after?
Well, both. I mean, that's good what Ian's saying. So Ian's saying, hey, here's what I even think a lead is in the first place.
Yeah.
So first, I want to make sure, is this a real lead? Once I find out it's a real lead, sure, I would love to know kind of what your communication point is from the time you uncover it as a real lead to the time they're saying, yes, come over my house.
Right. So, I mean, we have all of our leads on a mail campaign. We have all of our leads on an email campaign, an MLS subscription for their neighborhood, very specific. And, I try to make contact with, the warm people once a week. The hot people, obviously as needed, if it's every day or every other day, or, as we're getting down there. And then the nurture people, they go on the 12-month and they get called, obviously like you teach half the time. But sometimes I scoot that up if I have availability to make more calls. And I just try and give them something, I'm not so good at it right now, but hey, did you see that email I sent you with that home that just went up in your neighborhood or whatever? Taylor sets all those up for me and I do my best.
Great.
But for the most part, when I'm following up with people, it's like to make an appointment.
That's right. So you're running the play, right? And so of all the things, a lot of people get lost in lead follow-up and they think they can automate their way into setting appointments. How important would you guys say is that voice-to-voice touch versus some of the more leveraged things like email and mail and the MLS things of that nature? In other words, if I were to say, let's just say that out of 10 appointments you set via lead follow-up, how many would you have gotten if all you did was the phone call and you didn't do anything else?
Most.
That's my point. And so I want the audience to hear this and say, okay, they get caught up in all the sexy, shiny stuff. It's like it's never going to take place of the voice-to-voice interaction of moving that relationship forward over time. You can't replace or automate that. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, totally. And if you look at our database of people who we used to call buyers and stuff, like I haven't heard from any of them in a while. But they're probably still getting emails from me. They're probably still getting like, little drips and drabs of things. And we add them on social media, but my phone's not ringing from those people.
That's right.
Really does speak to it. But not to say we haven't had at least 2 people reply to an email and invite us over. So
yeah.
But those are people we obviously talk to at least once. So.
It's the 80-20. It's the 80-20, right? It's like you're getting 80% of your results through 20% of your efforts, which is the phone call. All the other stuff, right, make up for 20%, like the emails and the this and the that and the social media. It all helps. It's all important. It's just never as important as the voice-to-voice interaction. All right, so let's shift gears. Let's talk about the listing appointment itself, because this is probably the most important part of this entire thing that we're doing called selling real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, we spend so much time and effort because it is the most important thing, right? It's the thing that determines whether or not you're going to enroll a new client or not. It's the thing that your dream client is going to look at to determine if they're going to hire you or not. So what are maybe 1 or 2 things that you've learned that really, really help you to win business at the listing appointment?
Being entirely honest with the client, and also, realizing that there's certain listings out there that we do not want, and sometimes we don't know it until we get there. We had a really nightmarish situation with one of our sellers recently, and it was like, if I had just read the writing on the wall when I was in the appointment, I would have avoided a lot of this headache.
Can I unpack that for a second for the audience and maybe even add into this a little bit? So really, both of what you said, I want the audience to hear this, is a mindset of you interviewing the seller as much as the seller interviewing you. You've learned that over time. Most new agents don't have that mindset because they go in there just willing to take whatever they can get. But agents with experience understand, man, you may not want everything you can get for a lot of different reasons. I think that takes a little bit of time. But overall, now you see things more objectively where you are truly detached from the outcome. You don't go in there like needy or desperate. You take the approach of, I don't need this client. If it's a good opportunity, I will serve them. But you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Would that be fair?
That's totally fair. Realistically, most people that we meet with need a real estate agent, but I don't need another client if they're
exactly.
Not that fits the business model that we're trying to run. And I'm interviewing the seller and I'm interviewing the property because there's a lot of properties in our market that we will not work on.
Say that one more time. I want the live audience, because they're all taking notes. Some are on their phone, like not even paying attention. You just dropped the most important part of the conversation in 28 minutes that I bet you 90% of them missed. So say what you just said so they can write this down. You're doing what on the interview process? Two parts of the interview?
I'm interviewing the seller and I'm interviewing the property.
So on the seller, you're interviewing the seller for what?
To see if they're the right personality type, the right fit, if they're going to respect my time as much as I respect theirs.
Beautiful. And then property. What are you looking for on the interview of the property?
If it's something that meets my business model, if it's something we think we can sell, because in our market, we completely stopped prospecting certain areas, certain price points, and certain property types. Like condos, we can't do them because the average market for condos right now is over, like, it's probably over 200 in some neighborhoods, and it's just, I can't do it. I'm investing money in a property that I can't sell.
Man, oh man, I think that what you just said, and I'm looking at my business partner Ben on this, but like I'm just so excited about that, because if agents could have that mindset and understand that there are endless amount of listing opportunities, there's only one of you. So we have to stop approaching listing appointments with such a scarcity mindset to think, oh my God, I need this person. I need this person. You don't need them. You can go get any listing anytime you want by simply your work ethic. You're the one that actually brings a lot more to the table than a listing brings to you. And that's what you and Taylor have realized.
We're operating as the buyer. Like, what is it Ben Hardy says in the book? I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm operating as the buyer. When we walk into an appointment, we've had this year 17 closed listings or 18 closed listings. If it was 17 or if it was 19, our year wouldn't be that different.
Such a good point.
But one bad seller can take away from multiple different listing opportunities. Like, if you have somebody that's not a good seller, they can be super difficult and take away from other opportunities that you would rather have.
Or one bad property. We had a listing in not a great neighborhood at a very low price point, the cheapest thing we sold all year, and it was over 200 days on the market, and it sucked the life out of us. Loved the guy to death. He was the sweetest client. He was really, really nice to work with.
But it was hard.
But his property just wasn't something that I, like, if his neighbor called me and said, hey, you sold my neighbor's place, and I heard you did a great job. Could you put mine on the market? It's like, I don't think I can. I'm sorry.
No, that's a great point. And most agents think about, oh, that's just one little list. No. It zaps the whole, like you said, the whole energy out of you, all the mind space. It just takes up so much. It's eating away at your entire business. And so it's just not worth it. And so let's go to schedule. And I got one more question for you guys, and then we're going to open this up for Q&A. So if you guys have questions, you guys can start to raise your Zoom hands. Let's just go through the schedule. I know we touched on it a little bit, but walk us through, like, start to stop, Ian, if you could, like the time you get in the morning to the time you're done.
Okay. So I pack her and the kids up in the car at 7:30 and say bye-bye. And I come into my office with my cup of coffee and my water, and I'm got my phone and I'm ready to just sit here for a while. So 7:30, I sort through expireds, canceleds, FSBOs, and FURBOs, and delete probably 80% of them because they're just not what I'm going to do. So I make sure, I only have the leads in there that I want to talk to. I handpick the best expireds for the day. I dial them. I handpick the best canceleds from the day before. I dial them. Dialing each number twice if I don't know if it's the right number or not, which is one of the most effective ways to get people on the phone is call them twice. I talked to a lady the other day, and she's a lead, and she's a pretty good lead. That she said the only reason I picked up is because he called me twice in a row. And it's, people are afraid. It's like, oh yeah, I don't know, something must have went wrong. But
exactly.
Once I get through that, I'm usually through all the new people by 8. And at that point, I go through and I call all of the expired from the past week or week and a half, depending on how many times I've called them. I call through that list. I call through the new canceled list. I call through the FSBO list. I call through the FURBO list. And then I go back. I call expireds, canceleds, FSBOs, and FURBOs again. So at this point, I've called the expireds, all those lead sources 3 times today, and it's probably only 8:30, 9 o'clock.
It's great.
And at that point, I probably have like 4 or 5 contacts. It's very slow. Some days I have 10, some days I have appointments set. I mean, it just depends. Every day is different. But then I get on to circle dialing, and I will do that usually until 10:30 or 11. I look through follow-up boss to see who I got to touch today. And then I just get back on. I call the expireds and the canceleds and the FSBOs and FURBOs again. And then I get back to circle dialing.
And we also wait for new cancels to come up on the market throughout the day. And I'll be going on Exact Dial to give them info for those to call as they come up.
Amazing. That usually goes until what time? 11 or 12?
Usually
all of that?
Yeah.
If I have to leave for an appointment, like 12 o'clock, we eat lunch, and then, I make some personal calls and things like that. And then we get back on at 1. And if I don't have an appointment, I'm just calling. And if we do, we're going over the numbers on the appointment and putting the presentation packet together. And then,
How many appointments are you typically going on per week?
I don't know exactly. Probably 2 or 3 at the most on a good week. So
what I want people to hear.
You still have none, right?
So what I want people to hear, though, Ian, is that you're either on an appointment or you're looking for one. What you just said, you just simplified the entire business. I want people to hear, like, well, all this guy does is make phone calls and go on appointments. Brandon just asked him about his schedule, and he said 2 things. When I ask a low producer what they do, dude, there's a million things they're doing. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm posting this. I'm going here. I'm going to. It's like, wow, you seem really busy. You're just not very productive. You only do 2 things is what I heard. I heard prospect.
You can spin the wheel all day long.
That's right. And I'm sorry, you said 3 things. You just said you prospect, you do lead follow-up, and you go on appointments. That's all you do. And so I guess the question for you is, like, if you were to go back and get licensed 10 years, like rewind, knowing what you know now, right? What maybe would you tell that agent that a new agent right now that's getting licensed or a newer agent in their first year could benefit from?
Get on the phone.
Get on the phone. I love it.
People aren't just going to call you
and respond to your Facebook
and
post.
say, hey, I definitely want to buy that house. As pretty and as nice as our Facebook ads have looked in the past, haven't, like you said in the call yesterday, I mean, there's no agent out there who can show you exactly what click led to that house being sold. It just doesn't exist. While we do it for exposure for us, because our friends who and acquaintances who run into us in public go, oh, I saw you got that house in my
exactly.
It's like we have that kind of impact where, I mean, it's always been like that for me, Taylor. It drives her crazy. Like everywhere I go, I meet somebody I know.
He's pretty much.
They always ask me, how's real estate? And once I got to that point, it took me like a year, 2 years to get to the point where anytime I ran into anybody, they would ask me how's real estate.
Yeah. Do you think that there's anything that you could do to replace your outbound business to get the same results? Like the amount of conversations you're having, is there anything you could think of? Because these agents want to hear it. They want to know, because they're chasing every day, right? They're chasing it as much as they can because they do not want to do this. They're looking for a different way. There's got to be something, Ian, that you could replace making these phone calls and do the type of production you're doing. There has to be.
You could teleport door to door and knock the door, maybe, but usually they're not. They're at work, like they're not home anyways. I've knocked doors. Nobody's ever home.
Yeah.
And if they
It's
are,
hard to
they're
replace.
dead down there.
You just can't replace hard work. I'm sorry. I've spent millions of dollars trying, I'm talking about for the audience. I've tried, and it's like, you just can't replace being able to sit down for 3 hours and talk to 25 human beings. That right there by itself, there's nothing out there right now. Now this might change, but nothing right now that in 3 hours time, you can speak with 25 of your ideal client avatars. They're just not. And so anyway, with that, I'm going to open this up for Q&A. Simon, let's go to you first, my friend.
All right, I think I'm unmuted. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm. We got you.
Cool. Appreciate y'all sharing. Ian, I reached out to you yesterday because I said I was going to ask you this, but I guess could y'all share a little bit about what it's like working together as a couple and how y'all split the work up?
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
he's doing all the prospecting right now. I come in, I've been trying to figure out how to get better systems in place so that somebody else can replicate what I've been doing. So I've been doing a lot of that, trying to streamline things. So I'm sitting here side by side with him. I normally have to put headphones on so I don't have to listen to us prospecting. And then he'll be passing me over, like if he gets a lead sheet or something like that, I'll take that, I'll input it into Mailbox Power, I'll write the handwritten note card. I will set them up on their MLS subscription so that I know that all that's done, they're taken care of. Make sure that he did we send off like a video text to them right away as soon as we get off the phone, make sure that's done. And then I'm responding to emails throughout the day. I've been trying to do hiring, so all the admin stuff. Lockboxes running around.
Yeah.
You're doing all the client servicing too, right? If you have a client, you're making sure you're updating them, getting paperwork, addendums, inspections, appraisals.
We have a TC for that, but a lot of the paperwork's taken care of. But then I'm also doing, I can't remember. Oh, like the seller updates weekly, doing those, making sure that I'm keeping an eye on that.
Sends out the Loom Sniper videos.
I've been doing Loom Sniper videos. I just started that. And then I also
a lot better to have her face on it than your face, Ian, for sure.
And then there's something else that I do. Maybe it'll come back to me. I don't know.
She does all the listing prep, or the listing plan preparation. Like I don't even know how to do a CMA.
I've also been doing like the weekly email content, and our daily stories, and make sure that we post on that every day. I've been adding people to our SOI database.
Ian, what do you even do, man?
That's amazing, Taylor.
I prospect and I go on appointments.
That's what I do all day, essentially.
I get it. Prospecting is not easy. On the Loom videos, what kind of views are y'all getting? Because I've done them and I've set 3 appointments that way, but it's like 1 in every 20 videos somebody watches.
So I will say I have not even looked at statistics on it. I didn't know that there really was. I just started doing the Loom videos maybe like
2 weeks ago,
3 weweeks ago, and I haven't been able to do it consistently yet. So
but that's
awesome.
3 appointments from 20 videos. That's a really
no. That was from like 100 videos. I'm talking about every 20 videos somebody watches it.
That's okay. From 100 videos to set 3 appointments is really good.
Yeah.
I started making sure that I was doing them really quickly, so I'm not spending a whole bunch of time on one, because before I was like pulling up the cloud CMA and going through and spending a lot of time on it and not knowing whether or not they're even going to open it. I started to cut that down a little bit, but making sure that it still looks very personalized to them. I'm still pulling up their property, and then I am just pulling up their neighborhood and then going to the stats section and going like really briefly, like, look at these days on market. Yours was much higher than that. I think something might be wrong here. Feel free to reach out if you want. And then our info at the end, and then send it off.
I'll throw in, just because I coach all 3 of you, that strategy is a really good opportunity for lead follow-up, by the way. So, right? So on lead follow-up, just send those videos. Yeah. So anyway, keep going.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's great. I've been needing new follow-up techniques. And I guess can I ask one more question and I'll get out of y'all's hair?
Please.
Okay, thanks. And Brandon, you can chime in. But I'm asking because I would like to get my girlfriend, soon to be, as y'all know from yesterday, fiance, involved in the real estate business. She's graduating in May in marketing. And I think this would be from what she's told me, she wants to be in marketing and sales. This is the perfect job for her. but she has like a lot of resistance because it's something that I'm doing. And so I don't know how y'all might suggest. Y'all are probably going to tell me not just to leave her alone, right? But how would you suggest like presenting the opportunity to her in a way that she might find it interesting?
So maybe Socratically, like I wonder who would be able to help me with these things I need help with in my
Looking
business.
for somebody that has
'Cause
experience in marketing.
I don't think I could ever be like, Taylor, you gotta get in the business. Like she wanted to do it. It was her thing that she wanted to do and jump in with me and help. And her role has gone from one to the other and really, really progressed to where she does more of the real estate than I do. And I always say I just work here.
Yeah, and I'll add in, Simon. I guess the yes, you can use all the way we teach as far as communication. However, but when you break all that apart, I guess for you guys, Taylor and Ian, I mean, how much were you making as a nurse?
Oh God, I was making maybe
$50 an hour.
no, I think it was like 40 by the time I quit. And I hated it so much that I would only work as minimal as I possibly could to get the bills paid because I worked per diem. So, I mean, I would only work, God, sometimes 12 hours a week. That's how bad I hated it. But
so the question, Simon, for your fiance is like, okay, a question could be, do you think from an income potential that working for yourself or working for an employer, the upside would be greater, right? The obvious answer is working for yourself, right? And so like for her, from an opportunistic standpoint, that's why we're all here. That's what brings us into this space, and for Ian and Taylor, like next year, I mean, there is no nursing job that would pay Taylor 250 grand. There just isn't. There isn't. And then where she could be with her kids and she could do her own thing with her husband and she could be in the home. And like, I just don't know if you could ever replace that, putting even money aside, So like when I'm looking at the opportunity we have in real estate, it's pretty compelling.
Yeah, I know some people don't want to work with their spouse and they're like, oh no, that's too much. But honestly, I love it. I have zero complaints. Thanks.
Yeah. I like working with you.
It's fun. I don't know. I feel like when you really know somebody and you're in this business together where you have this goal and this vision that you want to do together and you both want it so badly that you're able to really like ping pong off each other to excel in your growth and help each other in each other's weaknesses. And
yeah. And like Brandon said a few months ago, like you say in your business, feedback is a gift. Sometimes it's a very pointy gift, but it's a gift either way.
Yeah. And I would just say, like, from a trust perspective, you're dealing with money. You're hopefully, Simon, you guys are going to share some financial stuff in your future if you're going to marry this woman. And it's like, well, who do you trust with the clients? Who do you trust with the money? And then you start to look at, okay, well, if you're going to go do something different and we're going to add funds into this bank account together, what could we do if we were doing something together, right? And then you get exponential results. Instead of you doing this thing, then you having to figure it out and you have to hire these other people. What could you do if you joined forces? I think that Ian and Taylor is a great example of that, right? So anyway, all those things are things to
right.
consider.
That's exactly what my thought was. Like, if I'm going to hire somebody, work with somebody, I'd rather it be with somebody that I love, that I already split money with anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that totally makes sense. And she's been complaining that all I talk about is real estate. So I'm like, girl, if you just get a job with me, then we could talk about real estate together.
I mean, if you guys drive each other nuts, you could even work in separate spaces. Like, we don't have to, like, if we didn't have so many kids,
right there, but
we could work in separate rooms. It's not like we need to necessarily be side by side all day. So that's always an option too. If that's like one of her concerns, is being together too much. It doesn't really have to be together.
Yeah.
Good deal. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Simon. Go ahead, Xavier.
Okay. First of all, thank you guys. There's a lot of nuggets I took from this video, so thank you. I was gonna ask, you guys were picky about what listings you're gonna take. Would it be a good idea to be picky in the beginning, or do you think it's worth it to kind of go through the experiences in the beginning and then be picky later?
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
If I told you that you we're going to take a listing today and it wasn't going to sell for 250 or 300 days, would you take it? Just to have something to do?
Honestly,
I told you you were going to end back up on the expired list again. I mean, would you take that listing?
no, in that case, no.
I think it depends. Like if it's a really unsaleable property, I definitely would shy away from it. And if it's a seller that's really extremely difficult and you know your personalities are not going to mesh, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
So we had a client in a really, really tough subdivision, and we took the listing because it was a referral from a friend. And the average days on market was 190, and the average list sold ratio was like 82. And we got him a 98% of ask offer in under 30 days. And he asked us if we would cut our commission
because it was $5K less
so
than his
he would
original
still net
asking.
exactly what he needed to net. And we
Told him no.
said no.
But it was very difficult.
He was a total jerk.
But the only reason, like his personality type was red flag to me for sure, right away. And I was right. You know, your gut, in my opinion, always knows. And I knew he was going to be a pain in the butt. But he was a personal referral from an agent that we really enjoy getting his referral business from. So we did take, in that case, that listing. And I would say, I guess it was worth it for that to keep the relationship between the other agent, but it was hard.
Let me ask you, let me just jump in here because you guys aren't coaches, right? And so let me just ask Xavier's question a different way. Okay. Would it be fair that you go into these situations with being picky and choosy as a result of the mistakes you've made in the past?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what Xavier's saying is, if you could go back, would you have erased the mistakes? In other words, how would you, right? So that's the question Xavier meant to ask. Correct, Xavier?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we have the right question, I got your back, Xavier. What he's asking is, dude, I'm a new agent. I've never taken a listing before. So I don't know who's going to be a pain in the ass. I don't know what you guys are talking about with a saleable listing because I don't have the experience you have. And so as a new agent, is there value in the early days for the first year or two to gain your perspective by failing? Is there value in it?
Yeah.
It's like,
you can afford it. Absolutely.
Well, it's like this. It's like your kids are going to ride bikes, Ian, Taylor, or they probably already do. The question would be like, okay, would you, like, knowing what you know now, like you go from training wheels to then taking those things off and falling a few times to then being able to ride the bike and the freedom that gives you to ride that bike, would you erase all of that for the couple of scuffed knees and elbows that it took to get there? No one would ever replace that. And so what Xavier is saying is, are the scuffed knees worth it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We wouldn't know anything if it weren't for our past, right? So,
does that help you, Xavier? Is that what you're meaning to ask?
Yeah, because when I'm circle prospecting, I'm finding areas that I'm struggling with conversations with the people that live there and just that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if it's worth it to be more picky in that aspect. Same with expireds. Should I be more picky with who I'm calling with expireds and canceleds, or would it be worth it to just call everybody?
business decision you have to make, right?
Yeah.
In the beginning, I would say calling everybody's not going to hurt because it's going to be good practice too, being on the phone.
When we jumped on the phone, we called anybody and everybody and set a bunch of appointments and went on a bunch of appointments and took some listings that were pretty great and some of them were not so great. And
and I would say as a result of that, Xavier, they are where they are now. And so I think there's a lot of value. Like, we are a result of the mistakes we've made in our past. That's how we learn. And so if you're asking if there's a world where you can never make a mistake and get to where they are, I don't believe that there is. I think that you have to go through that in order to have the perspective. And so the idea of saying, how can I build this business without ever making a mistake and having that perspective and mindset, I don't know if it's possible. And so I would actually embrace some failure and embrace some risks in the early days. Ian and Taylor can speak from this because they have 10 years worth of mistakes. And so I would never want to take that away from Xavier.
Yeah, absolutely. We made a big mistake on a listing in October that didn't sell. We spent a bunch of money on.
And you learned.
And he was like, well, should I just rent it out? And we were on the market for a couple of months, and guess what he did? He rented it out.
Yeah. Xavier, any other questions, or is that helpful?
Ian did mention that he sticks to the script.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if verbatim or not, but I've
Pretty
been
much.
trying to be more framework minded and less script. Would it be helpful if I just stuck to the script verbatim and then did framework later on in the future?
The script kind of gives you the framework in a way that's super conversational, especially the new ones. So you kind of, if you're really having the conversation, you're going to trip over most of the script because you're going to have to ask that question to get to the answer, to get to the motivation, or to get to the timeline. Like, no, I guess, but I'm not that good at this. I just do what I'm taught. And
Okay, fair enough.
Good. Mr. Scott, go ahead.
Hey guys, thank you guys for doing this, by the way. Learned a lot. It's also really cool what you guys are doing too. Um, I've been playing around with hiring an executive assistant right now, and so rewind maybe 6 months. The idea of working with my wife was phenomenal. I thought it would be a really, really cool thing to do eventually. Now I'm starting to think of all the pros and all the cons, and one con that comes up is like, for example, in the event, because I want my assistant to take over everything. So probably be fully licensed. If you guys are going on vacation, who's on the phone with your clients and who's doing that stuff? Late evenings, weekends. I have a daughter. And so turning it off and being with family during those times versus up wife's doing that and you know what I mean? So like I'm weighing that. I kind of told her yesterday I was thinking about hiring an executive assistant. She came back and was like, well, I definitely want to do stuff. So I could tell she definitely wants to do some stuff. And so I just wanted your guys' overall opinion on the pros and the cons, hiring someone else versus working with your spouse.
So that is exactly the reason why we actually want to hire an additional person, an executive assistant,
Ooh,
because
okay.
I don't want to be showing houses on the weekend. I don't want to
Right.
be showing buyers houses at 6 p.m. And I don't want to feel like I need to respond to anyone after 5 p.m. because I have 3 high needs kids and I want to be
Right.
present and there with them and I want to have that work-life family balance. So
Right.
for me to permanently be in that executive assistant position, I don't want that for my life, for exactly the reasons that you said. So I
Okay.
don't know if finding out if your wife would be like interested in doing any sort of lead gen someday would be
Right.
something to think about, or
Yeah.
having her do administrative stuff in the beginning and then maybe doing how we're
Mhm.
transitioning over. I'm not really sure, but
yeah.
I see what you're saying, and that's why I
Yeah.
don't.
So the goal really is like, we don't want to work for the business. We want to work on the business, and we'll have
Right.
someone for the business.
That makes
Also,
sense.
a really valuable thing that I learned is don't let your clients make your schedule. And there's no
Right.
such thing as an emergency in real estate.
I agree.
You can wait till after 11 a.m. or till Monday morning a lot of times.
Cool.
Right.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Jacob. Great question, dude. Wyatt, go ahead.
What's up, guys? Appreciate you sharing. Definitely got a lot of nuggets. I had a quick question about your pickiness of taking listings. So I had a situation where I sold the neighbor's house, and one of the neighbors came in, and he had one of those personalities that would basically like get on your knees and beg for it. But he was like, have you ever had people like at you like they're gonna sell, but they want you to like beg for it almost? And it wasn't that the house was unsellable. It was like the dude was so off-putting that I was like, dude, I don't even want to meet with you. Have you guys ever ran into that situation? And if so, like looking back, maybe I should have just swallowed my pride and taken that extra listing, or I don't know.
I feel like if your gut was saying no, your gut was probably right. And if they were going to be a very, very difficult client and it felt wrong to you, most likely you were probably right. I don't think we have taken listings that in my gut, I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. And
we're right every time. Like
every time it's a learning lesson though. I will say that, but if it feels really, really wrong, it very well could be.
You can hear that. You can hear that mentality through the phone, and those people, I hang up.
That's the whole part, Wyatt, of like interviewing the seller and interviewing the property and having equal business stature, is that you have a choice in this too. That's the difference between need and want. That's the difference between I want clients, I don't need clients. And therefore, I'm going to have the right to say no as much as they have the right to say no. And that's why you hear in all my scripts, we can decide together if it makes sense to work together or not. And at the end of this, we both have the right to say yes or say no. And so we've got to shift the mindset of giving all the power to the prospect such that you have to get on your knees, right? And then they just become the puppet master and then you have to play to their tune. We got to shift that. We have to shift that to be, this is my decision too. You know what I mean? I don't have to bring on the client. I don't have to take the listing. I'm in control of my destiny. And we always say, the more you prospect, the less you have to tolerate. So the more prospecting you do, the more appointments you have, the more opportunity you have, that equals higher level of clientele because you're not as desperate. And the exact opposite is true. For agents that don't prospect that much, they take what they can get. And it's usually the crumbs, the worst properties, the worst clients to deal with because they have to.
Yeah. That kind of speaks in my numbers as a percentage of last year. Units is 186% of last year, but volume is 220.
Wow. It's great. Does that make sense, Wyatt?
Yeah, that makes total sense. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, let's get one more from Najiski. Go ahead. You can unmute.
Hi, everyone. I'm new around here, so, this is maybe my second, third call. And I have a question. I mean, all the information you're sharing is pretty awesome. I appreciate it. So what is your process of elimination when you're calling FISBOs? And maybe the second question can be asked, can be answered in the same answer. And do you call FISBOs that you think are overpriced?
Yeah, of course. They don't know what they're doing. So, I'm happy.
Like, how do you convince them?
I'm not convincing anybody of anything. That's not the point. You don't want to convince anybody. You tell them the truth and they can choose to believe it or not. And I guess the process of elimination is deciding if I think this person is worth investing that level of effort into, because some people they'll tell you, like, I'm not paying an agent ever, no matter how much more they can get me. If I make more money, I'm still not. I had a client literally tell me, or a prospect tell me, I don't care if you can get me more money. I'd rather take less money and sell it myself.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
It was a FISBO.
Let me just help you too. And Ian, you and Taylor can speak to this. In the process of being pickier and choosier, at some point in your career, like you heard Ian say, in the beginning of his career, their average price point was 170. Their average price point now is 415. How? They just made a decision. So inside of their database, they use Vulcan 7 to get data. They're just making a decision to not even call any properties that are less than their average list price. So for you, we talked a little about this on the coaching call the other day. It's like, that's just a decision. No one's forcing you to call the $50,000 LLC, leads that we all get. You just make a decision to filter. I'm not even calling anything less than X price. I'm not even calling anything that's not in this area. And then what he's talking about, when he's talking about hand selecting stuff in the morning, what he's learned and what Taylor's learned is, because Ian's been doing this for a little while, he knows the market. He knows, okay, a property in that neighborhood, in that condition, very sellable. A property in that price point, in that neighborhood, I'm good. And he doesn't even worry about it. So he's hand selecting the best opportunities, not just loading everything up into the dialer and calling everything, because he's losing out on the first 15 minutes of his prospecting session to other agents, versus hand selecting the best opportunities. Because guess what? When you load up the data in whatever system you're using, it doesn't know how to prioritize what you want and what you don't want. It just says, here are the 17 things. It loads it up and you just hit start. By the time you get to something you really want, it's too late. Ian, you want to add to that?
100%. So I know for a fact, like, there's a part of the county, there's a city that we don't prospect because there's so much new construction. There's easily 3,000 homes for sale, on the MLS, and so many more off the MLS. It's unbelievable. 40% of our inventory is in one city.
So we took out.
So we just won't call there. Now we have a listing there because it was my mom's friend's mom, and it's like, okay, like, we'll help you sell your house, but the price gotta be real smoking hot for me to even be willing to invest there, because people need attention from you, and if you're never going to be able to sell their house, like you're just putting time and effort and energy, something that won't sell. But you got to know your market really, really well. I've lived here for a long time. I know the market pretty well, and I know the places where houses sell super quick, and I know the places where houses do not sell, and it changes pretty regularly. So a neighborhood that used to be super hot for us, we realize is not so hot anymore, and it's just you got to roll with the punches.
Cool.
Yes, I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, listen, Ian, Taylor, thank you guys. This has been incredible. I mean, just so many good little things. And for the community and for myself, we appreciate you guys doing this.